Economists say the junk rating by Moody's need not have further impact on the country's economy as a lot of the damage has already been done. Moody's on Friday evening stripped South Africa of its investment grading, lowering its bond grading to junk status. Moody's cited constraints on the government's finances and a weak economy as reasons for the downgrade. Now, to discuss the impact on the rand, we're now joined via Skype by SABC News business anchor Arabile Gumede. A very good morning to you, Arabile. It's not good news, and the rand has hit record lows.
Yeah, it certainly has. Look, there's even passing 18 rand against the US dollar, right? 18.04 in the very early hours of this morning, and then doing it again smack bang when the market opened at 9 o'clock. It really does tell you then that South Africa is in a precarious situation. Yes, that downgrade to junk status by Moody's did certainly push things over the edge. But let's remember that we expected this. This was perhaps something that is even a year delayed and a year overdue, really, for South Africa. So perhaps one could say that this was a reprieve that we had gotten for the longest time. What has certainly hurt, however, is the fiscal degradation that, of course, has been caused by the coronavirus. Just how much fiscal degradation we certainly need as a country in order to try and get out of the mire. And it doesn't help then that, of course, we do perhaps need to look into going to the IMF or the World Bank, which is exactly what the Finance Minister Moody said this past weekend, that a conversation of that sort was certainly had. Desiree.
The sentiment that we need not worry because what caused the downgrade is damage that had already been done. What does this mean?
Well, I suppose it's a little bit loose to be saying that, right? Because we still need to fix exactly those elements. It's a bit surprising that with the statement out of National Treasury, the sentiment was that we now need to make sure we speed up the structural reforms. And it's a bit worrying to only get that sentiment now when we should have been increasing and speedily going through our structural reform anyway as a country. So one might say that we're a bit delayed in that regard. But what it does mean, though, Desiree, is that it becomes a whole lot more difficult for South Africa to lend money. If we are to put it in very, very simple terms, you could almost say that South Africa is now fully blacklisted in accordance with all of the ratings agencies. But this does not mean that we don't get money into our coffers or into our fiscus. It just means it becomes a whole lot more difficult to get it. And it does mean then that we have to show proof of assets. We have to show a whole lot more in terms of expansionary efforts as well, and ability to pay in order to get any loans from international investors. We also exit, unfortunately, something called the World Government Bond Index, which we entered back in 2012. And what that means is that as much as, or rather at least $11 billion could outflow from South Africa's bonds at the very minimum. So Citibank hopefully will give us an update on that and exactly how much has been lost. And that is set to happen at the end of April.
How is the coronavirus pandemic and the nationwide lockdown, affecting or impacting the economy?
Yeah, look, it's going to be a massive, massive hurt. Look, if we start off on a global scale, then, Desiree, the IMF has predicted that, or rather JP Morgan has predicted that in the first half of the year, global GDP would have contracted, right, would have decreased by 10.5%. That is historically one of the greatest drops we've seen in GDP numbers, surpassing the 2008-2009 financial crisis. On the local front, we've seen companies come out with estimates of 2.8, 2.6, our own Reserve Bank saying 0.2% in terms of contraction, that is. So that is also an optimistic bet at best, really. So what it has done, though, is that it has meant that we've had to forego all the rules, really, in many instances. The South African Reserve Bank doing at least three things over the last 2 weeks to try and aid consumers. They've cut interest rates by 100 basis points. They've bought bonds on the secondary market, which will try and add liquidity back into the market then. And as a third thing, they've also then just this weekend also announced that they will be releasing, or rather relaxing the rules when it comes to how much banks can hold, so that it spreads a whole lot more back into the economy. As much as 300 billion rand worth of loans is now pumped back into the economy to keep liquidity flowing. So National Treasury then becomes the big question. do we do from that end? We haven't really seen much from them. So it means that they now have to find a way to move forward. This weekend, National Treasury Finance Minister Moody saying that we may need to ask the IMF and World Bank, not necessarily for help, but really for aid in which they're offering right now to take care of the healthcare situation. The UN this morning also saying, unfortunately, that Africa needs $100 billion. That's 1.8 trillion rand, Desiree, to try and shore up the needs of the continent.
So, Arabile, at the moment, a global conversation about where next in terms of economic activity. In the US, there's already conversation about the possibility of relaxing some of the restrictions of the lockdowns to allow business activity. What sort of conversation is happening in South Africa in this regard?
Look, there's certainly no need to kind of push back then when it comes to the lockdown. I think South Africans are beginning to perhaps grapple with it, but understand what it's for. The economic fraternity has certainly stood up and said that they will play their part as much as possible. Of course, we saw this weekend the Moody family saying that they will then put through another R1 billion as well to try and aid the process and make things a little bit better in that regard. We saw comments out of FNB that they will help customers, and they're announcing that today, and we'll get to chat to the CEO, Jacques Collier, a little bit later on as well in our bulletin. We also then chat to ABSA, who've also put out a wide-ranging set of sentiments and clauses and ability to help consumers as well, what seems to be a well-thought-out move following Standard Bank just last week. So it does mean that businesses will continue to restrict their movement, continue to restrict their operations, and very few really saying that they will open anytime soon. Really, the question is how soon, of course, we can abate the scenario when it comes to the coronavirus on a local scale. We're trying to flatten the curve, but the other curve we're trying to flatten, of course, is the negative GDP number. And as much assistance as possible there will certainly help.
And the South African public, of course, wondering at the moment how the Moody's decision is going to hit them in their pockets.
Yeah, look, it's certainly going to affect things quite enormously. One thing that you will notice, though, to begin with, and specifically while the coronavirus is in play, is that you won't find an immediate push on to consumers purely because the regulators, the banks themselves are trying to say, let's not burn the consumer's pocket even more. Let's not strain you any more than you're currently already strained. So for now, why don't we rather just sit back and say, look, we're going to take that in, and unfortunately we're going to take in that bite a little bit later on, and we'll deal with the revision later on in our budget. That's also the sentiment out of Finance Minister Moody saying then that South Africa needn't for now look at revisions to the budget. All we need to do is reprioritize funding, move things around, and hopefully then we can make a clear assessment. So that Moody's decision, not ideal, one that I think was expected, though, in some quarters of the economic world, and one that I think South Africa should have necessarily gotten a while ago. Why? So that we could actually get the structural reform going, and perhaps a spank up the bum would certainly have helped us at that point.
Arabile Gumede there, thank you so much for your time.